She walked in without knocking and walked out breathless. The millionaire rehearsed I love yous that weren't meant for her. Every word hurt, but also awakened love, and her heart decided to wait, even wounded. Don't go now. This romance has just begun. Leave your like and subscribe to experience every chapter. What comes next will change everything between them. The alarm clock rang at 4:30 in the morning, as always. Marina slowly opened her eyes, feeling her body still heavy with fatigue, but her mind already alert, ready for another day. The studio apartment where she lived was small but cozy. On the peeling walls, she had pasted magazine clippings of beautiful landscapes, places she dreamed of visiting one day. On the makeshift wooden shelf, books were stacked lovingly, each one carrying stories that transported her far from that harsh reality. She got up in silence, as if the world was still asleep and she didn't want to wake it. She prepared a simple coffee, ate a slice of bread with butter, and put on the navy blue uniform she wore every day. Before leaving, she looked at herself in the small mirror hanging next to the door. Her brown eyes reflected tiredness, but also a light that insisted on not fading. Marina had always been like that, resilient, kind, capable of finding beauty where many only saw monotony. The walk to the bus stop was long. The streets were still empty, lit only by the yellowish streetlights that flickered occasionally. The cold dawn air filled her lungs and gradually woke her body. Marina liked this moment. It was when she could think, dream, imagine a different life. Not that she complained about the life she had. On the contrary, she felt grateful for having work, health, and a roof over her head. But deep down she knew there was something more waiting for her, something she couldn't yet name. The bus was later than usual. When it finally arrived, it was already crowded. Marina got on, squeezed between passengers, and held tight to the iron bar. The journey to South London took almost 2 hours. 2 hours of swaying, heat, people sweating and complaining. But she didn't complain. She just watched through the foggy window, seeing the city slowly wake up. The first rays of sun illuminating the tall buildings, people rushing to work, life happening at a frantic pace. She got off the bus in front of the imposing gate of the mansion where she had worked for almost 5 years. The place was enormous, surrounded by high walls and leafy trees that hid the building from curious eyes. Marina passed the security guard who knew her well and always greeted her with a friendly nod. She walked along the stone lane to the back entrance, where employees usually entered. The mansion belonged to Gabriel Sterling, a 42-year-old man, reclusive and mysterious. He had been a famous, internationally recognized pianist, but had abandoned everything after, a tragedy that shook his life. Marina didn't know exactly what had happened, but she knew that pain was etched into every corner of that house. The rooms were luxurious, but devoid of life. The white walls, the noble wooden furniture, the expensive paintings, everything seemed frozen in time, as if the house had stopped breathing along with its inhabitant. Mrs. Eleanor, the elderly governess who had looked after the mansion for over 30 years, was already in the kitchen when Marina arrived. She was a strong woman, with white hair tied in a bun, blue eyes that saw into people's souls, and a generous heart that welcomed anyone in need. It was she who taught Marina everything about the job, about how to care for a house with respect, about ethics, dignity, and most importantly, about compassion. "Good morning, my dear," Mrs. Eleanor said with a sweet smile. "Did you sleep well?" Marina smiled back. "Yes, I did, Mrs. Eleanor. And you?" "Ah, my dear, at my age, one sleeps little, but sleeps happily. Come, have some coffee with me before you start. I made that cornmeal cake you like." The two sat at the kitchen table and chatted about trivialities, about the weather, about the garden plants, about the soap opera Mrs. Eleanor was watching. It was these small moments that made Marina feel part of a family, even if it was a borrowed one. After coffee, Marina began her routine. She went up to the second floor where the guest rooms, the library, and the music studio were located. The first task was always the same: making the beds, dusting, changing the towels. She did everything meticulously, as if each gesture was a form of affection, a way of caring for that place that, in a way, also cared for her. The music studio was her favorite place. It was a spacious room with large windows overlooking the garden, shelves full of sheet music and vinyl records, and, in the center, a magnificent grand piano covered by a white sheet. Marina had never dared to lift that sheet. She knew it was sacred territory, a place of pain that Gabriel protected with all his might. She dusted carefully, without making a sound, always respectful. From time to time, she would stop and look at the piano, imagining what it would be like to hear Gabriel play. Mrs. Eleanor had already told her that he was brilliant, that his performances moved crowds, that his compositions touched the souls of those who heard them. But all that was in the past. Now, the piano was just a monument to what once was. Marina was finishing cleaning the library when she heard footsteps in the corridor. Her heart quickened. Gabriel rarely appeared during the day. He usually stayed locked in his office, working on projects no one was sure about. She caught glimpses of him, always serious, always distant, always immersed in his own thoughts. The footsteps approached and then stopped. Marina pretended to be busy organizing books on the shelf, but she felt his gaze on her. She turned slowly and came face to face with Gabriel, standing at the door, watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling," Marina said, lowering her eyes. "Good morning, Marina," he replied with a deep but not harsh voice. "Sorry to interrupt. I just came to get a book. Please, feel free, sir. I'm done here." She gathered the cloths and the cleaning supplies basket and left quickly, feeling her face flush. She didn't know why she got so nervous near him. Perhaps it was his imposing presence, the seriousness in his gaze, or perhaps it was something deeper, something she didn't want to admit even to herself. The days followed their usual rhythm. Marina woke up early, took the crowded bus, performed her duties with dedication, and returned home exhausted but satisfied. On the way, she often stopped at a small neighborhood bookstore where she browsed used books and, when she could, bought one. Reading was her refuge, her safe haven, the place where she could be anyone she wanted without fear of judgment. One afternoon, while dusting the living room furniture, Marina heard a strange sound coming from the second floor. It was as if someone was moving something heavy. Curious, but not wanting to be intrusive, she slowly went up the stairs, trying to identify where the noise was coming from. She reached the corridor and realized it was coming from the master bedroom, Gabriel's room. The door was ajar. Marina hesitated. She shouldn't be there. That was a private space, a boundary she had always respected. But the sound continued, now accompanied by a low murmur, as if someone was talking to themselves. Without thinking much, she gently pushed the door open and peeked in. What she saw left her motionless. Gabriel was kneeling in the center of the room, his back to the door, holding a small velvet box in his hands. He opened and closed it repeatedly, rehearsing gestures, moving his lips as if practicing a speech. Suddenly he turned slightly to the side, positioning himself in front of the tall mirror next to the bed. Marina felt her heart pound. He was rehearsing a marriage proposal. The scene was so intimate, so vulnerable, that Marina felt as if she were invading something sacred. Gabriel, always so serious and imposing, was there, exposed, practicing a moment that was meant to be perfect. He opened the small box again, revealing a ring that sparkled under the soft light of the room. Then he began to speak softly, as if talking to someone invisible. "I know I'm not the easiest man to live with. I know I carry wounds that haven't healed yet. But you made me believe that it's possible to start over. You brought light where there was only darkness. That's why I want to spend the rest of my life by your side. Will you marry me?" Marina felt a tightness in her chest. There was so much pain, so much hope in those words. She wanted to leave immediately, but her feet seemed glued to the floor. It was then that Gabriel turned completely and saw her standing at the door, her eyes wide, her face red with embarrassment. The silence that settled between them was deafening. Gabriel quickly stood up, closing the small box and putting it in his pocket. His expression was a mix of surprise, anger, and shame. "Marina, what are you doing here?" His voice came out harsher than he intended. I heard a noise and came to see if everything was all right. I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to. I didn't see anything. A lie. She saw everything. And Gabriel knew it. He ran a hand through his hair, visibly uncomfortable, trying to find an explanation that made sense. I was rehearsing a speech for a charity event. I'm giving a talk and wanted it to sound natural. That's all. Marina nodded quickly, wanting to believe it, wanting to disappear as quickly as possible. I understand, sir. Sorry to have interrupted. Excuse me. She almost ran out, hurried down the stairs and went straight to the kitchen, where Mrs. Eleanor was peeling potatoes for lunch. The governess immediately noticed that something was wrong. What happened, my dear? You look pale. Nothing, Mrs. Eleanor. I just got scared by a noise. The elderly woman observed her with those eyes that saw beyond words, but didn't insist. She just placed a hand on Marina's shoulder and said softly, "If you need to talk, I'm here." Marina thanked her with a weak smile and returned to work, but her mind was elsewhere. The image of Gabriel kneeling holding that small box wouldn't leave her mind. Who was that proposal for? Who was the woman who had the power to make such a closed-off man open up that way? And why, upon witnessing that scene, did Marina feel a pang of something that felt very much like sadness? The following days were strange. Gabriel avoided crossing paths with Marina in the corridors. When it happened, he would just nod briefly and go on his way, as if wanting to forget the embarrassing incident. Marina, in turn, did everything not to think about it, but it was impossible. The scene replayed in her mind countless times, and every time she closed her eyes she saw that ring sparkling in the velvet box. It was Mrs. Eleanor who broke the silence one morning while the two were having coffee together. "My dear, may I ask you a question? Have you ever been in love?" Marina almost choked on her coffee. The question caught her by surprise. "Yes, Mrs. Eleanor. Once, a long time ago, but it didn't work out." "And why didn't it work out?" "Because he didn't see me the same way. I was just another person in his life. Someone who went unnoticed." The governess smiled sadly. "You know, Marina, sometimes we fall in love with the wrong people at the wrong time. And sometimes we fall in love with the right person, but we're afraid to admit it." Marina remained silent, feeling the weight of those words. Was Mrs. Eleanor trying to say something? Had she noticed that Marina felt something for Gabriel? The idea scared her. No, it couldn't be that. She wasn't in love. She just felt curiosity, admiration, perhaps. Nothing more than that. But deep down, she knew she was lying to herself. That afternoon, while cleaning the music studio, Marina allowed herself to look more closely at the covered piano. She approached slowly, extended her hand, and lightly touched the white sheet. She felt the soft texture of the fabric and imagined what it would be like to lift that covering, open the piano lid and play a single note. Would the sound still be as beautiful as they said? Would Gabriel still remember how to play? She was so absorbed in her thoughts that she didn't notice when Gabriel entered the studio. She only felt a presence behind her and, turning around, came face to face with him, standing a few steps away, watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. "Sorry, sir. I wasn't going to touch anything." Gabriel took a few steps towards the piano, but said nothing. He stood there looking at the covered instrument as if looking at a ghost. Marina felt she should leave, give him space, but something held her there. "Do you like music, Marina?" His voice broke the silence, soft, almost melancholic. "Yes, I do, but I don't understand much. I just know that music makes me feel things that words can't explain." Gabriel smiled faintly, a sad smile laden with memories. "That's exactly it. Music is the language of the soul. When words fail, music speaks." They stood there side by side, looking at the covered piano, saying nothing more. But in that silence something moved, a subtle connection, almost imperceptible but real. Marina felt as if, for the first time, Gabriel truly saw her. Not as the maid, not as someone who looked after his house, but as a person. Someone with feelings, with dreams, with a soul that also needed care. When he finally left the studio, Marina stayed there for a few more minutes, feeling her heart beating strongly in her chest. Something had changed. She couldn't explain what, but she knew that moment marked the beginning of something new, something that scared and fascinated her at the same time. That night, as she returned home on the crowded bus, Marina looked out the foggy window and allowed herself to dream. And for the first time in a long time, the face that appeared in her dreams was not that of a distant prince, but of a real man, full of scars, but also full of possibilities. A man who, like her, was trying to find his place in the world. And so, without realizing it, Marina began to fall in love. The weeks that followed brought a subtle but noticeable change in the mansion's routine. Gabriel began to appear more in the corridors, always finding some excuse to pass by the places where Marina was working. He would ask for coffee, inquire if she had seen a certain book, comment on the weather. These were brief, almost insignificant conversations, but they left Marina with her heart racing for hours. Mrs. Eleanor observed everything with a discreet smile. The old governess knew the signs well. She had lived long enough to recognize when two souls were beginning to find each other, even if they themselves weren't yet aware of it. And, even though she knew that path would be difficult, she also knew that the heart does not obey social rules, class differences, or conventions. The heart simply feels. One Saturday morning, Marina arrived earlier than usual. The sky was still tinged with pink and orange, and the fresh morning air carried the scent of the garden flowers. She entered through the kitchen and found Mrs. Eleanor sitting at the table, a cup of tea in her hands and a distant look. "Good morning, Mrs. Eleanor. Is everything all right?" The governess smiled, but there was a sadness in that smile. "Good morning, my dear. Sit with me for a bit. I need to tell you something." Marina sat down, concerned. "Are you all right? Did something happen?" Eleanor took a sip of tea and sighed deeply. "I'm fine, don't worry. It's just that sometimes the past knocks on the door and we have no choice but to open it. You know, Marina, when I was young, not much older than you are now, I also worked in a wealthy family's house. And there I met a man." Marina's eyes widened, surprised. "You never told me that." "Because it's a painful story, my dear. But I think it's time for you to hear it. Perhaps it will help you understand some things." Eleanor began to tell her story. She was 23 when she started working at the Montgomery family's house, one of the most traditional in London. There, she met Anthony, the eldest son, a 28-year-old man, handsome, educated, and kind. They grew closer little by little, first with shy glances, then with long conversations in the kitchen when everyone else had gone to bed. Anthony treated her with respect, with admiration, with an affection she had never experienced before. I fell madly in love with him, Marina, and he with me. We met in secret, planned a future together, dreamed of a simple life, far from that world of appearances. But when the family found out, it was as if the world had collapsed on our heads. "What happened?" Marina asked, already feeling the weight of the outcome. "His mother called me into a room and offered me money to leave. She said I was ruining the family's reputation, that a girl like me could never be part of that circle. I refused the money, but she made it clear that if I stayed, Anthony would be disinherited, thrown out of the house, and it would be my fault. I couldn't do that to him. So one night I packed my things and left without saying a word. I never saw him again." Marina felt her eyes well up. "And you never regretted it?" "Every day of my life, my dear. Every single day. Because I let fear win. I let people decide my destiny for me. And now, seeing you and Mr. Sterling starting to grow closer, I don't want you to make the same mistake I made." Marina remained silent, absorbing those words. Mrs. Eleanor placed her hand over hers and squeezed it gently. "If you feel something for him, don't be afraid to feel it. No matter what people say, no matter the differences. What matters is what your heart says. And my dear, the heart doesn't lie." Marina thanked her with a nod, but inside she was confused. Did she really feel something for Gabriel? Or was it just admiration, gratitude for him treating her kindly? She wasn't sure. But one thing was true. Ever since that day she saw him kneeling, rehearsing the proposal, something inside her had changed. That same afternoon, while organizing books in the library, Marina found an old folder hidden between two thick volumes of encyclopedias. Curious, she opened it and saw that it was full of newspaper clippings, photos, and concert reviews. They were all about Gabriel. There were photos of him on stage, smiling, bowing to the audience, his hands on the piano. There were glowing reviews, calling him a genius, a prodigy, one of the greatest pianists of his generation. Marina carefully flipped through the pages, feeling as if she were getting to know a version of Gabriel that no longer existed. The man in the photos was vibrant, full of life, with a sparkle in his eyes that she had never seen in his current self. What could have happened to extinguish that light? What could have been so painful as to make him abandon everything? She was so absorbed that she didn't notice when Gabriel entered the library. She only heard his voice, soft but laden with emotion. "You found my past." Marina looked up, startled, and immediately closed the folder. "Sorry, sir. I didn't mean to pry. I was organizing the books and found it by chance." Gabriel approached slowly and took the folder from her hands. He stared at the cover for a long moment, as if deciding whether to open it or not. Then, with a sigh, he sat in one of the armchairs and gestured for Marina to sit too. "Don't worry, Marina. I'm not angry. In fact, it's been a long time since anyone looked at these things. I avoid them myself. It's too painful." Marina sat on the edge of the armchair, not knowing what to say. Gabriel opened the folder and began to flip through the pages, stopping at some photos, smiling faintly at others, frowning at many others. "I was happy back then. I traveled the world, played in the best theaters, met incredible people. Music was everything to me. It was the reason I woke up every day. But then, everything changed." He stopped at a specific photo. It was an image of him next to an older couple, all smiling, embracing. Marina noticed the resemblance in the woman's and man's faces. They were his parents. "They came to see me at a concert in Vienna. It was an important performance, a milestone in my career. I was so happy they were there. After the concert, we went out to dinner, celebrated, laughed like we hadn't in ages. On the way back to the hotel, an accident happened. A drunk driver swerved into our lane. My parents didn't survive." Marina felt her heart clench. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Sterling. I didn't know." He closed the folder and put it aside. "After that, I couldn't play anymore. Every time I sat at the piano, I saw their faces. I heard their laughter, remembered that last night. Music, which was my life, became my torture. So I covered the piano and swore I would never play again." Marina felt like reaching out, touching his arm, offering some kind of comfort. But she didn't dare. She just said, in a soft voice, "The music is still inside you, sir. It hasn't left. It's just waiting for the right moment to return." Gabriel looked at her, and for the first time Marina saw tears in his eyes. "Do you really believe that?" "I do, because something so beautiful cannot die. It can fall asleep, it can hide, but it doesn't die." They stood there in silence, sharing a pain that needed no words. And in that moment, Marina realized that what she felt for Gabriel went far beyond admiration. It was compassion, empathy, a deep desire to help him rediscover the light that once shone so brightly. The following days brought an even greater closeness. Gabriel began to seek out Marina for longer conversations. He asked about her life, about her dreams, about the books she liked to read. Marina, in turn, gradually opened up, talking about her difficult childhood, about her mother who worked too hard and fell ill early, about her dream of one day having a small community library in the borough where she lived, a place where children could find refuge in books just as she had. Gabriel listened to everything attentively, fascinated by the way Marina saw the world. She had a purity, a hope that he had lost a long time ago, and, without realizing it, he began to fall in love. Not for a romanticized idea, but for the real person who was there in front of him, with her scars, her dreams, and her own light. On a rainy afternoon, as the wind shook the garden trees and the rain beat heavily against the windows, Marina was cleaning the music studio when she heard a strange noise. It was as if something had fallen. She looked around and saw that one of the sheet music stands had shifted and several papers were scattered across the floor. She quickly bent down to gather everything, trying to put the sheet music back in the correct order. It was then that she saw something that made her stop. Among the time-yellowed sheets there was a different score. The paper was newer, but the handwriting was the same as the others. At the top of the page, handwritten, was the title, New Beginning. But the composition was incomplete. There were notes written halfway down the page and then nothing, just blank spaces. Marina carefully picked up the sheet music and stared at it, imagining what it would be like to hear that music complete. Did Gabriel remember it? Would he ever have the courage to finish it? She was so concentrated that she didn't notice when he entered the studio. She only felt his presence behind her, and turning around saw Gabriel standing at the door, wet from the rain, his hair plastered to his forehead, his breathing heavy. "Marina, are you all right? I heard the shelf fall." "Yes, I am, sir. It was just that the shelf shifted with the wind. I was already tidying up." She started gathering the sheet music quickly, but Gabriel approached and knelt beside her, helping her pick up the papers. It was then that he saw the New Beginning sheet music in her hands. His face paled. "You found this?" Marina nodded, unsure if she should have touched it. "Sorry, sir. It was among the others. I didn't know." Gabriel took the sheet music from her hands and stared at the page with an expression of pain and longing. "I started writing this a few months before the accident. It was meant to be a gift for my parents, a way to thank them for everything they did for me. But I never finished it. After they were gone, I couldn't bear to look at it anymore." Marina felt her heart clench. She didn't know what to say, how to console him. So she did the only thing she could do. She stayed there beside him in silence, offering her presence as a form of support. Gabriel raised his eyes and looked at her. There was something different in that gaze, something Marina couldn't name, but that made her feel as if the world had stopped at that exact moment. "Thank you, Marina, for being here, for not being afraid to stay near me, even knowing that I carry so much pain." "I'm not afraid, Mr. Sterling. Pain is part of life, and sometimes sharing pain with someone makes it lighter." He smiled, a sad but genuine smile. "You're a special person, did you know that?" Marina felt her face flush. "I'm not special, sir. I'm just someone trying to live the best way possible." Gabriel reached out his hand, and for an instant, it seemed he was going to touch her face. But then, as if awakened from a trance, he withdrew his hand and quickly stood up. "I need to go change. I'm soaked." He left in a hurry, leaving Marina alone in the studio, her heart pounding and her hands trembling. What had just happened? What was that gaze, that almost touch? Marina didn't know, but one thing was certain: she was falling in love. And it seemed so was he. That night, Marina could barely sleep. She tossed and turned in bed, thinking of Gabriel, the way he had looked at her, the words he had said. Was she deceiving herself? Did he really feel something? Or was it just gratitude, kindness? The next day, upon arriving at the mansion, Marina found Mrs. Eleanor more agitated than usual. The governess was in the kitchen, preparing a strong coffee and arranging a tray, with fine biscuits. "Good morning, Mrs. Eleanor. Is there anything special today?" The governess smiled, but there was a concern in that smile. "Yes, my dear. Mr. Sterling is receiving a visitor today, a very important person from his past." Marina felt a tightness in her chest. "Who?" Mrs. Eleanor hesitated before answering. "Helena Fitzgerald, his ex-fiancée." Marina's world seemed to spin. Ex-fiancée? Gabriel had an ex-fiancée? And she was coming to visit him? Suddenly everything made sense. The velvet box, the rehearsed proposal. It was for her, and now she was coming back. Marina felt a mix of emotions: sadness, disappointment, but also a pang of jealousy she didn't want to admit. She tried to hide it, but Mrs. Eleanor noticed. "My dear, don't be like that. Things are not always what they seem. Trust what your heart is feeling." But Marina couldn't trust. Not at that moment. Everything seemed to be falling apart before it had even begun. And for the first time since she started working at that mansion, Marina felt like leaving and never coming back. Helena Fitzgerald arrived at the mansion exactly at noon, like an apparition out of a fashion magazine, tall, elegant, with perfectly brushed blonde hair and designer clothes that screamed sophistication. She entered through the main door, as if entering her own home. Marina caught a glimpse of her as she passed through the hall, carrying a basket of clean laundry. Helena's perfume was strong, distinctive, and seemed to fill every space she passed through. Gabriel received her in the living room, and Marina couldn't help but notice how different he looked. He wore a light blue dress shirt, tailored trousers, and polished shoes. His hair was neatly styled, and there was a subtle nervousness in his gestures. Marina felt her heart clench. He had dressed up for her, for Helena. Throughout the afternoon, Marina tried to concentrate on her work, but it was impossible not to hear the voices coming from the living room. Helena spoke loudly, laughed frequently, and every now and then, Marina heard Gabriel's deep voice responding. They seemed at ease with each other, like old friends, or more than that. Mrs. Eleanor noticed Marina's state and tried to console her. "Don't jump to conclusions, my dear. Appearances can be deceiving." But Marina couldn't help it. With every laugh she heard coming from the living room, she felt as if something inside her broke a little more. She knew she had no right to feel jealous. After all, who was she? Just the maid, a simple girl, without sophistication, without the glamour that Helena carried so naturally. Gabriel would never see her the same way he saw Helena. How could he? Late in the afternoon, Helena said goodbye and left, but not before arranging to return the next day. Gabriel accompanied her to the door, and Marina saw them embrace. A long embrace, full of familiarity. When Gabriel closed the door and turned, he found Marina standing in the corridor, holding a cleaning cloth so tightly that her fingers were white. "Marina, are you all right?" She forced a smile. "Yes, I am, sir. Excuse me." She hurried past him and went straight to the back corridor bathroom, where she finally let her tears fall. She cried in silence, angry at herself for having allowed herself to dream, for having believed that there could be something between her and Gabriel. How could she have been so naive? When she composed herself and returned to the kitchen, she found Gabriel sitting at the table, talking with Mrs. Eleanor. He seemed uncomfortable, fiddling with his hands, looking down. The governess cast a meaningful look at Marina, as if to tell her to stay and listen to what he had to say. "Marina, can you sit for a moment?" Gabriel asked, his voice soft. She hesitated, but obeyed. She sat on the edge of the chair, avoiding looking directly at him. "I wanted to explain about Helena. I know you must have found her visit today strange." Marina shook her head quickly. "You don't need to explain anything to me, sir. Your personal life is none of my business." "But I want to explain," Gabriel insisted, finally raising his eyes to face her. "Helena and I were engaged 3 years ago. We were going to get married, but after my parents passed, I completely shut myself off. I cancelled the wedding, pushed everyone away, including her. It was cowardly of me, I know. And now she's come back wanting to resume our friendship. She says she holds no grudges, that she understands what I went through." "And you want to resume it?" Marina asked, hating how her voice came out shaky. Gabriel remained silent for a long moment. Before answering, he looked at Mrs. Eleanor, who nodded slightly as if encouraging him to be honest. "I don't know, Marina. I don't know what I want. I only know that my life had been stagnant for 3 years, and suddenly lately, I feel something is changing. I feel like I'm breathing again." Marina swallowed hard, not knowing what to reply. She wanted to ask if this change had anything to do with her, but she didn't have the courage. She just nodded and stood up. "I'm glad you're feeling better, sir. Excuse me." She left before he could say anything else, feeling her heart broken into 1,000 pieces. In the following days, Helena became a constant presence at the mansion. She always arrived late in the morning, stayed for lunch, spent the afternoon talking with Gabriel in the library or the garden. And, little by little, Marina realized that Helena wasn't just trying to resume their friendship. She wanted more, much more. Helena was strategic, always friendly with Marina, always helpful, always offering assistance. But there was something in her eyes, a calculated coldness, that made Marina uncomfortable. Once, while Marina was organizing books in the library, Helena approached with a Sweet smile. Marina, isn't it? Mrs. Eleanor told me you've worked here for years. You must know Gabriel very well. I know enough, Mrs. Fitzgerald. Helena sat in an armchair and crossed her legs elegantly. You know, Gabriel and I have a long history. We were perfect for each other. Everyone said so. When he cancelled the wedding, I was devastated, but I understood. He needed time to heal, and now I'm here to help him rebuild his life, the life we were meant to have together. Marina felt a pang in her chest, but maintained a neutral expression. That's good that you're here then. Helena smiled, but it was a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I know you take very good care of him, Marina, but there are things someone like you can't understand. His world is complicated, full of social obligations, of expectations. He needs someone who knows how to navigate that universe, someone like me. Marina hugged the books to her chest and forced a polite smile. Excuse me, Mrs. Fitzgerald, I need to finish my work. She left feeling small, insignificant. Helena hadn't said anything explicitly cruel, but the message was clear. You don't belong in this world. You never will. That night, Marina arrived home shattered. She threw herself onto the bed and cried until she had no more tears. Mrs. Eleanor had tried to console her before she left, but words couldn't reach the pain Marina felt. She had allowed herself to dream of something impossible, and now she was paying the price. The next day, Marina had barely slept. She arrived at the mansion with deep, dark circles under her eyes and a heavy heart. She tried her best to avoid crossing paths with Gabriel, but he seemed to always be in the wrong place at the wrong time, or perhaps the right place. Marina no longer knew. Late that night, when everyone had left and Marina was finishing tidying the kitchen, Gabriel appeared. He was barefoot, wearing only a t-shirt and sweatpants, his hair disheveled as if he had run his hands through it 1,000 times. Marina, we need to talk. She continued washing the dishes without looking at him. There's nothing to talk about, Mr. Sterling. Yes, there is. I notice you're different, distant, and I need to know why. Marina dropped the cloth in the sink and turned to him, her eyes shining with restrained tears. Do you really want to know, sir? All right, I'll tell you. I made the mistake of believing there was something between us. I made the mistake of thinking that the glances, the conversations, the moments we shared meant something, but I was wrong. And Helena made that very clear to me. I don't belong in your world, Mr. Sterling. I never will. Gabriel took a step forward, his expression shocked. Marina, it's not that. You're misunderstanding everything. Am I? Then tell me, sir. That velvet box I saw you rehearsing with, who was it for? It was for Helena, wasn't it? Gabriel remained silent, and that silence was the confirmation Marina needed. She shook her head, tears finally escaping. That's what I thought. Thank you for waking me up to reality, Mr. Sterling. I need to go now. She grabbed her bag and left in a hurry, ignoring his calls. She ran down the stone lane, passed through the gate, and only stopped when she was far enough from the mansion. There, leaning against a streetlight, Marina let everything out. The pain, the disappointment, the anger at herself for having allowed herself to dream. In the following days, Marina seriously considered resigning. She couldn't bear to be in that place anymore, seeing Gabriel and Helena together, hearing the plans they made, feeling every second as if she was being erased. But Mrs. Eleanor convinced her to stay. Don't run from pain, my dear, face it, because only then will you grow. Marina didn't quite understand what the governess meant, but she agreed to stay, at least for now. It was during this period that an invitation arrived at the mansion. It was from the cultural center of the borough where Marina lived. They were organizing an event to raise funds for the creation of a community library, and they wanted Marina to be part of the organization. It was her dream coming true, even if still in a small way. Marina was so excited that, without thinking, she mentioned the invitation during coffee with Mrs. Eleanor. She didn't notice that Gabriel was passing through the corridor and had heard everything. That afternoon, he sought her out in the music studio. Marina, about this library event, are you going to participate? She was surprised by the question. Yes, I am, sir. It's important to me. I'd like to help. I can make a donation or contribute in some way. Marina shook her head. You don't have to, Mr. Sterling. It's already very kind of you to offer. But he insisted. It's not kindness, Marina. It's admiration. You have a beautiful dream and you deserve to see it come true. She looked at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes, and felt her heart clench again. Why did he do that? Why did he make everything so difficult? Thank you, Mr. Sterling, but I need to do this on my own. I need to prove to myself that I'm capable. He nodded, understanding. I understand, but if you change your mind, the offer still stands. Marina thanked him and returned to work, but she couldn't get that conversation out of her head. Gabriel seemed genuinely interested in her dream, in her achievements. Was Helena wrong? Did he really see her as something more than just the maid? On the day of the event, Marina woke up earlier than ever. She was nervous, excited and scared, all at the same time. She put on her best dress, a simple but beautiful blue one, tied up her hair and looked at herself in the mirror. She saw a strong, determined woman, ready to fight for her dream. The event would take place in the evening, at the community hall of the borough. Marina arrived early to help with the organization. There were tables with used books for sale, handicrafts made by residents, and a small stage where some performances would take place. The place was decorated with colorful flags, and the atmosphere was festive. Marina was organizing the books when she felt a familiar presence. She turned and came face to face with Gabriel, standing at the entrance of the hall, looking around with curiosity and something that seemed like admiration. Mr. Sterling, what are you doing here? He approached with a shy smile. You said the event was open to the public, so here I am, as part of the public. Marina didn't know whether to be happy or scared. Wasn't Helena with him? Had he come alone? As if reading her thoughts, Gabriel said, I came alone, Marina, because I wanted to be here. For you. Her heart pounded. Before she could answer, one of the organizers called Marina, asking for help with the chairs. She apologized and left, but throughout the night she felt Gabriel's gaze on her. The event was a success. They raised enough money to start the library, and the entire community got involved. At the end of the night, when everyone was leaving, Gabriel approached Marina again. It was beautiful, Marina, seeing you here, fulfilled, surrounded by people who admire you. It was inspiring. She smiled, genuinely happy. Thank you for coming, Mr. Sterling. It means a lot to me. He hesitated for a moment, as if wanting to say something important, but then just nodded. I'll see you on Monday. Marina watched him leave and felt a mix of relief and disappointment. What was he going to say? Why did he stop? On Sunday, Marina received an unexpected message. It was from Helena. She asked to meet at an elegant cafe downtown. Marina was confused but accepted. Perhaps it was a chance to clarify things, to understand what was really happening. When she arrived at the cafe, Helena was already there, impeccable as always. She smiled and waved for Marina to sit down. Thank you for coming, Marina. I know you must be surprised by the invitation. Yes, I am, Mrs. Fitzgerald. What do you want? Helena took a sip of her coffee and stared at Marina with a cold gaze. I want you to stay away from Gabriel. Marina's eyes widened. What? You heard right. Gabriel and I are resuming our relationship. Soon we will announce our engagement again, and you with your presence are getting in the way. He pities you, Marina. He feels guilty for having given you false hopes. But the truth is, he will never want you. You are just the maid. Helena's words were like daggers. Marina felt the world spin, but forced herself to maintain composure. If that's the case, why are you here? If he doesn't want me, why bother asking me to stay away? Helena smiled, a venomous smile. Because I know Gabriel, and I know he has a soft heart. But this will pass. He just needs a little push. And I came here to give you the chance to leave with dignity. Resign. Go live your life. Let Gabriel live his. Marina stood up, trembling with anger and pain. You have no right to tell me what to do, Mrs. Fitzgerald. And if Gabriel really wanted to be with you, he wouldn't need me to step aside. He would choose you of his own free will. Helena also stood up, her eyes flashing. You'll regret not listening to me, Marina. I'm going to marry Gabriel, and when that happens, I'll make sure you no longer have a place in that mansion." Marina left the cafe without looking back, tears streaming freely down her face. She knew she needed to make a decision, stay and fight for what she felt, or leave and protect her heart. But, at that moment, all she could feel was pain. Marina didn't go to work on Monday. She called Mrs. Eleanor saying she was feeling unwell, which wasn't a lie. She was sick at heart, in soul, in hope. She spent the entire day in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand how everything had come to this point. When had she allowed herself to fall in love? When had she stopped being just the dedicated maid and become a woman with feelings she couldn't control? Mrs. Eleanor called several times during the day, concerned. On the last call, the governess said something that made Marina rethink everything. "My dear, you can't run forever. At some point you'll have to face the situation, and when that moment comes, you need to be ready to hear the truth. His truth, not the truth others tell about him." Marina promised to return the next day, but spent the whole night awake, rehearsing 1,000 conversations in her head, imagining 1,000 different scenarios. All of them ended with her heart broken. When she arrived at the mansion on Tuesday morning, everything seemed strangely silent. Not even Mrs. Eleanor was in the kitchen. Marina went up to start work on the second floor, and as she passed through the corridor, heard voices coming from the library. One of them was Gabriel's, the other was Helena's, and they were arguing. Marina didn't want to listen. She knew it was wrong, but her feet refused to move. She stood there by the half-open door, listening to words that would change everything. "Helena, I've already told you. I'm not getting back together with you. It was a mistake to let you get close again." Helena's voice was altered, almost desperate. "But why, Gabriel? We were perfect together. Everyone said so. Your parents loved our relationship. Why? Are you throwing everything away?" "Because it wasn't perfect, Helena. I was unhappy and didn't have the courage to admit it. Our relationship was more about social expectations than true love. And after my parents passed, I realized I couldn't keep living a lie." "A lie? Are you calling me a lie?" "I'm not calling you a lie. I'm saying what we had wasn't real. And now, for the first time in years, I feel something real. Something that scares and fascinates me at the same time." There was a tense silence. Then Helena asked, her voice cold as ice, "It's because of her, isn't it? Because of the maid?" Marina felt her heart stop. She held her breath, waiting for Gabriel's answer. "Her name is Marina, and yes, it has everything to do with her. She made me see life in a way I had forgotten. She made me want to play again, to create again, to live again. She has a purity, a kindness that I don't find in anyone in our social circle, and I fell in love with that. I fell in love with her." Gabriel's words echoed through the corridor, reaching Marina like a wave. She covered her mouth with her hands, tears silently streaming down her face. He had fallen in love with her, he really had. Helena gave a bitter laugh. "You're joking, aren't you? You're going to throw away everything we built, everything we have, for a girl who isn't even part of our world. Gabriel, be sensible. This is just a phase, a romantic fantasy that will pass." "It won't pass, Helena, because what I feel for her is more real than anything I've felt in years. And I won't let you or anyone make me give up on this." Helena let out a sound of frustration. "You'll regret it, Gabriel. When this bubble bursts and you realize that love doesn't pay bills, doesn't sustain social status, doesn't put you in the right places, you'll regret it, and I won't be here waiting." Gabriel replied calmly but firmly, "I know, and I respect your decision, but mine is made." Marina heard footsteps approaching the door and quickly moved away, running down the corridor and up the stairs to the third floor, where she rarely went. She hid in one of the empty rooms, her heart pounding so hard it felt like it would explode. She sat on the floor, leaning against the wall, trying to process everything she had just heard. Gabriel had fallen in love with her. He had said it out loud. He had chosen her instead of Helena, instead of everything his world represented. But at the same time, Marina felt fear. Fear of not being enough, fear of disappointing him, fear that Helena was right and that it was just a fantasy that would soon pass. She stayed there for almost an hour until she heard footsteps coming up the stairs. It was Mrs. Eleanor with a worried look on her face. "Marina, my dear, what are you doing here? I've been looking for you for ages." Marina stood up, wiping her tears. "Sorry, Mrs. Eleanor. I just needed a moment." The governess approached and held Marina's hands gently. "You heard, didn't you? The conversation between him and Helena?" Marina nodded, unable to speak. Eleanor smiled, a smile full of tenderness. "So you know he loves you. And now, my dear, you need to decide what you're going to do with that information. But what if he regrets it? What if he realizes I'm not—" "Enough!" The governess shook her head. "You're asking the wrong questions, Marina. The question isn't whether you're enough. The question is, do you love him? And if you do, are you willing to fight for it?" Marina thought for a long moment. She thought about everything she had experienced in recent months, the glances, the conversations, the moments of connection. She thought about how her heart raced every time she saw Gabriel, how alive she felt in his presence. Yes, she loved him deeply. "I am, Mrs. Eleanor. I'm willing to fight." The governess hugged her tightly. "Then, go to him, my dear. Go and tell him what you're feeling." Marina went down the stairs with her heart in her hands. She searched for Gabriel throughout the house until she finally found him in the music studio. He was sitting on the piano bench with the New Beginning sheet music in his hands, looking at it with an expression of deep melancholy. Marina stopped at the door, watching him. "Gabriel, may I come in?" He looked up, and when he saw her, his face lit up. "Marina." "Of course, come in." She entered slowly, her legs trembling. She stopped a few steps away, not knowing how to begin. "I heard," she finally said, "the conversation between you and Helena. I didn't want to hear it, but I did." Gabriel stood up, his expression shifting to something between hope and fear. "And what did you hear?" "I heard you say you fell in love with me." He took a step forward, his eyes fixed on her. "And what did you feel when you heard that?" Marina took a deep breath, gathering all the courage she had. "I felt fear. Fear of not being enough. Fear of disappointing you. Fear that you might regret it. But I also felt hope, because I also fell in love with you, Gabriel. And that scares me more than anything." Gabriel closed the distance between them in a few steps. He held Marina's face with both hands, his eyes shining with emotion. "You could never disappoint me, Marina. You are the most incredible person I've met. You brought me back to life. You made me want to play again, to create again, to feel again. But what if the world out there doesn't accept it? What if people judge? Let them judge. I spent years living according to others' expectations. And where did that lead me? To a covered piano, an empty house, a meaningless life. You gave me meaning again, Marina. And I won't give up on that. I won't give up on you." He pulled her close and kissed her. It was a kiss full of feeling, of promises, of everything they hadn't been able to say with words. When they separated, Marina was smiling, tears streaming freely down her face. "I love you, Gabriel. And I love you, Marina, more than I ever imagined it was possible to love someone." They stood there embraced in the middle of the music studio as the afternoon sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the piano that for the first time in years no longer seemed so daunting. In the following days, the news spread. Helena wasted no time telling everyone in Gabriel's social circle about his romance with the maid. Reactions varied. Some were shocked, others judgmental, still others found it romantic. But Gabriel didn't care. He had made his decision and was at peace with it. Marina, on the other hand, had to deal with curious glances and malicious comments. Some people from the borough where she lived judged her, saying she was taking advantage of the situation. Others admired her, saying she had courage. But in the end, what mattered was what she and Gabriel felt for each other. Mrs. Eleanor was radiant. She saw in them the chance for redemption that she herself had never had, and she made a point of protecting the couple from any external interference, warding off unwanted visitors, and creating a safe environment for their love to flourish. One day, Gabriel called Marina to the music studio. When she entered, she was shocked by what she saw. The sheet covering the piano had been removed. The instrument gleamed under the light, imposing, majestic, ready to be played. "Gabriel, You—" He smiled, extending his hand to her. "I finished it. The New Beginning composition. And I want to play it for you. It was you who gave me the courage to come back." Marina approached, moved. Gabriel sat at the piano, and she stood beside him, watching his trembling hands rest on the keys. For a moment, he hesitated, as if still afraid. But then he looked at Marina, saw the love and support in her eyes, and began to play. The music filled every corner of that theatre, touching the soul of every person present. It was impossible not to be moved, impossible not to feel the pain, the overcoming, the love that each note carried. And when Gabriel played the last notes of New Beginning, the entire theatre rose, applauding on their feet, many with tears in their eyes. Gabriel stood up, bowed to the audience, and then, to everyone's surprise, extended his hand backstage. Marina hesitated, but Mrs. Eleanor gently pushed her. "Go, my dear. This moment is yours too." Marina walked onto the stage, shy, uncomfortable with so many eyes on her. But when Gabriel pulled her close and hugged her in front of everyone, nothing else mattered. There, under the spotlights, in front of hundreds of people, he kissed her, and everyone saw. Everyone knew. That was their love. Real, true, unbreakable. The months that followed the performance were transformative. The money raised from the event was more than enough to build the community library. Marina led the project with dedication and love, choosing every book, every shelf, every detail with care. Gabriel was by her side every step of the way, helping to carry boxes, paint walls, and organize the spaces. It was incredible to see how that man, who once lived reclusively in an enormous mansion, was now there, in the middle of the community, smiling, talking, being part of something bigger. The library was inaugurated on a sunny Saturday afternoon. Children ran through the corridors, choosing books with eyes sparkling with excitement. Adults browsed copies, discovering stories they had never had access to. And Marina, in the midst of it all, felt her heart overflow with gratitude. That was her dream coming true. Gabriel watched her from afar, leaning against a bookshelf with a smile on his face. Mrs. Eleanor was beside him, also moved. "She's special, isn't she, Mr. Sterling?" He nodded. "More than I could have imagined. She saved me, Mrs. Eleanor. She brought me back to life." The governess placed her hand on his arm gently. "And you saved her too. You gave her the courage to dream bigger. You saved each other." That night, after everyone had left and the library was silent, Gabriel asked Marina to stay a few more minutes. They sat on the floor, leaning against a bookshelf full of children's books, looking around. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" Marina said, her voice soft. "To see a dream become real." "It is. And to think that a few months ago, I didn't even know it was possible to dream again." Marina rested her head on his shoulder. "You're playing again. You're creating again. You're living again." Gabriel held her hand and interlaced their fingers. "All because of you." They stayed there for a long time in silence, just appreciating the moment. Then Gabriel stood up and extended his hand to her. "Come with me. There's something I want to show you." They left the library and walked through the streets of the borough until they reached the bus stop where Marina used to catch the bus every day to go to work at the mansion. Gabriel stopped there and looked around. "It was here, wasn't it? Where you waited for the bus every day before sunrise for years?" Marina nodded, surprised. "It was. But how do you know?" Gabriel smiled. "Because one day, a few months ago, I woke up early and wanted to know what the routine was like for the person who took such good care of me. So I came here and waited. I saw you get off that bus, tired but with a smile on your face, and it was at that moment that I realized you were different, that there was something about you that I needed to know better." Marina was speechless. "You did that?" "I did, and it was the best decision I made, because it made me truly see you." He took something from his pocket. It was the velvet box. The same one Marina had seen that day, months ago, when she caught Gabriel rehearsing the marriage proposal. Gabriel knelt right there in the middle of the empty street, under the yellowish glow of the streetlight and opened the small box. Inside there was the ring, but it wasn't the same anymore. It had been redesigned. Now it had a blue stone in the center, the color of Marina's eyes. Marina, I rehearsed this moment so many times. First, I thought it was for someone else, but I was wrong. It was always for you. From the first day you entered my life, I just didn't know it yet. You taught me what true love is. You taught me that differences, other people's opinions, judgments don't matter. What matters is what we feel, and I feel that I want to spend the rest of my life by your side. Will you marry me? Marina was crying, her hands trembling. She knelt too, meeting his height, and held his face with her hands. Yes, Gabriel. 1,000 times yes. He placed the ring on her finger and kissed her, right there, on the empty street, under the stars. And, in that moment, nothing else existed. Only the two of them, and the love they had built together. The wedding preparations were simple but full of meaning. Marina didn't want anything ostentatious, nothing that seemed forced. She wanted something intimate, with the people who truly mattered. Gabriel fully agreed. They decided to get married in the library itself, surrounded by the books that meant so much to Marina, with the community that had supported them. Mrs. Eleanor was radiant. She helped Marina choose her dress, a simple but elegant model that enhanced the young woman's natural beauty. And on the wedding day, it was she who walked Marina down the aisle in place of the father she had never known. The ceremony was moving. Gabriel cried upon seeing Marina enter, and she cried upon seeing the tears in his eyes. They exchanged vows written by themselves, sincere promises of love, respect, and companionship. And when the officiant declared them husband and wife, the hall erupted in applause and tears. The party was lively, with live music, abundant food, and much joy. But the most special moment was when Gabriel sat at the piano that had been specially brought for the occasion and played New Beginning again, this time dedicating every note to his wife, to the woman who had transformed his life. Marina watched him, her eyes shining with love, and when he finished, she approached, kissed him softly, and whispered, "Thank you for choosing me. Thank you for letting me choose you." In the following months, the couple's life found a pleasant rhythm. Gabriel resumed giving concerts sporadically, always choosing charitable causes to support. Marina continued working at the library, now as a coordinator, organizing literary events, reading circles, and educational incentive programs. They moved to a smaller, cozier house in a quiet neighborhood between South London and Marina's borough. The mansion was sold, and the money was used to create a foundation that supported cultural and educational projects in underprivileged communities. Mrs. Eleanor was invited to live with them and gladly accepted. The governess had become part of the family, the matriarch who cared for everyone with love and wisdom. A year after the wedding, Marina discovered she was pregnant. The news came on a sunny morning as she and Gabriel were having coffee in the garden. She showed him the test, her hands trembling, and Gabriel was paralyzed for a few seconds. Then he picked her up in his arms and spun her around, laughing and crying at the same time. "We're going to be parents, Marina. We're going to have a family." Mrs. Eleanor was in the kitchen and upon hearing the news also cried. She saw there the continuation of a cycle of love that she herself had never been able to have, but which she now witnessed with a full heart. The pregnancy was smooth. Gabriel was inseparable from Marina, always worried, always attentive. He transformed one of the house's rooms into a beautiful nursery with shelves full of children's books, a toy piano, and musical note drawings on the walls. When their daughter was born on a rainy April afternoon, Gabriel cried as he held her for the first time. She was a small girl with brown eyes like Marina's and dark hair like his. They named her Sophia, which means wisdom, because she represented everything they had learned together. The first months with Sophia were challenging, but also magical. Gabriel discovered a paternal side he didn't know he had. He woke up in the middle of the night to change diapers, sang lullabies, played soft melodies on the piano to soothe her. And Marina, even exhausted, watched those moments with a love that grew every day. Mrs. Eleanor became the grandmother Sophia would never have otherwise. The governess spent hours cradling the girl, telling stories, teaching old songs, and, in her eyes, shone the happiness of finally being part of a real family. When Sophia turned 1, the family decided to take a trip. Gabriel wanted to introduce his daughter to some of the places that had marked his life. They went to Vienna, the city where everything had changed. But this time, the trip was not marked by sadness. It was marked by hope, by renewal, by happy memories. Gabriel took Marina and Sophia to the theater where he had given his last performance with his parents. They stood there in the empty foyer, and Gabriel told stories about that night, about how proud his parents were, about how they laughed together. There was no more pain in those memories, only gratitude for everything they had lived. Marina, thank you for bringing me back. Thank you for showing me that it's possible to honor the past without living trapped in it. She held his hand, with Sophia in her arms. You did the same for me, Gabriel. You showed me that dreaming is possible, that true love exists. They returned to England renewed, and in the years that followed, life continued to surprise them. Gabriel released an album of his compositions, all inspired by Marina and Sophia. The album was a success, not for its sales figures, but for the emotional impact it had on people. Marina expanded the library project, creating branches in other boroughs, always with Gabriel's support. Together, they became a reference in social projects, showing that it's possible to use privileges and resources to transform lives. Sophia grew up surrounded by love, music, and books. She was a curious, clever, full-of-life girl. And from a young age, she showed talent for music. Gabriel began teaching her to play the piano at 5 years old, and she absorbed everything with incredible ease. On a quiet Sunday, when Sophia was 7 years old, the family was gathered in the living room. Gabriel played the piano, Marina read a book, and Mrs. Eleanor knitted, sitting in her favorite armchair. Sophia was exploring a box of old objects that Gabriel kept in a cupboard. Suddenly, she cried out, "Daddy, Mummy, look what I found!" She held the velvet box. She opened it carefully and saw the ring that was no longer there, as Marina wore it every day. But inside the box there was an old photo. It was of Gabriel and Marina on the day of the library's inauguration. They were embraced, smiling, with the community in the background. "What is this, Daddy?" Gabriel stopped playing and approached. He held the small box and looked at the photo with a nostalgic smile. "This, my dear, is a photo of one of the most important days of my life. It was the day I realized I had found my place in the world, beside your mother." Sophia looked at the photo, then at her parents and smiled. "You're beautiful together." Marina approached and picked up her daughter. "You know, Sophia, this little box has a story. Your father rehearsed a marriage proposal in front of the mirror without knowing I was watching, and I thought it was for someone else. I was so sad." Gabriel laughed. "And I was so embarrassed when you saw me. I tried to make up an excuse, but you knew the truth." Sophia's eyes widened. "And then what happened?" Marina and Gabriel exchanged glances, smiling. "Then, my dear, we fell in love. And we learned that true love overcomes any obstacle. It overcomes differences, judgments, fears, because when two people truly find each other, nothing else matters." Sophia hugged them both. "I love you, and we love you, little one, more than words can say." That night, after Sophia went to sleep, Gabriel and Marina sat in the garden, looking at the stars. Mrs. Eleanor had already retired to her room, but had left a message for them on the kitchen table. Just 2 words, written in the trembling handwriting of old age. "Thank you, children." Marina read the note and felt her eyes fill with tears. "She gave us so much, Gabriel. She guided us when we were lost. And now she can rest in peace, knowing that she made a difference, that she helped create a family." They stayed there, embraced, in silence, thinking about everything they had lived through, all the obstacles they overcame, all the love they built, and looking back, they realized that every moment of pain, every tear shed, every doubt faced had been worth it, because in the end, they found each other, and that was all they needed. The years continued to pass. Mrs. Eleanor lived until she was 92, always lucid, always present, always loved. When she passed, it was peacefully, surrounded by the family she had helped to build. Gabriel and Marina buried her with all honors, and on her tombstone they wrote, "Mother of the heart, guardian of love, eternal in our lives." Sophia grew up and became a brilliant pianist, following in her father's footsteps, but with her own style. She also inherited Marina's passion for books and created a project that brought music and literature to public schools. It was the continuation of her parents' legacy, proof that love multiplies when cultivated with dedication. Gabriel never covered the piano again. He played every day, created constantly, and always said that every note was a tribute to Marina, the woman who had saved him from himself. Marina continued her mission at the library, now with several units spread across the city. She became a reference in community education and was invited to give lectures to inspire others to follow their dreams, regardless of where they came from. And whenever someone asked what the secret of their love was, of their marriage that seemed so strong, so true, Marina replied, with simplicity. The secret is choosing every day to be by each other's side. It's respecting, it's supporting, it's forgiving. It's remembering that love is not just a feeling, but a decision, and we decided every day to love each other. Gabriel always completed smiling. And we decided not to be afraid. Afraid of what others would say, afraid of not being enough, afraid to risk. Because true love only happens when you have the courage to surrender completely. On a quiet afternoon many years after that day when Marina accidentally walked into the room and saw Gabriel rehearsing the marriage proposal, the two were sitting in the garden of their house. Gabriel had graying hair and Marina had some wrinkles around her eyes, but the love between them remained intact, strong, unshakable. Sophia was there, now an adult woman, with her own daughter in her lap. Gabriel and Marina's granddaughter, a girl with big eyes and a mischievous smile, held the velvet box she had found in her grandparents' cupboard. "Grandma, was it with this that Grandpa proposed to you?" Marina looked at Gabriel, who smiled tenderly. "It was, my dear, and it was the happiest day of my life." The girl opened the small box and looked inside, curious. "But there's nothing here." Gabriel approached and carefully took the small box. "The ring is on your grandma's finger, where it should be. But do you know what's inside this little box? Memories, love, hope, everything we built together." Marina held his hand, interlacing their fingers, just as they had for so many years. "And we will continue building, because true love has no end." Sophia hugged her parents, moved. "Thank you for teaching me what love is, for showing me that it's worth fighting for what we feel." Gabriel and Marina looked at each other, their eyes shining. They had faced so many challenges, overcome so many obstacles, proven that love transcends social barriers, economic differences, others' judgments. And there, in that moment, surrounded by the family they built, they knew they had won. Because in the end, love always wins. Dear listeners, we hope Marina and Gabriel's story has touched your heart. If you were moved by this journey of overcoming, love and courage, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments which moment touched you the most. Every day, we bring intense stories like this, which reveal the deepest side of the human soul. Stories that make us believe that no matter where we come from or what obstacles we face, true love always finds a way. Thank you for joining us this far. We await you in the next episode with another story that will stir your emotions and make you reflect on what truly matters in life. See you soon.